And now I'm going to introduce today's featured speakers: Tiffany Warren, class of 97 and Bentley trustee; Hannah Gerry, class of 2013; Jenna McPhail, class of 2015; and Abigail Sullivan, class of 2021. Tiffany is Executive Vice President, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Sony Music Group. In this newly created role, Tiffany expands equity and inclusion activities and policies across all of Sony Music Group's global recorded music, publishing, and corporate divisions. In her previous role as Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer for Omnicom Group, she led strategy to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives aligned with business objectives and client results, directing efforts to advance and retain top-performing talent inclusive of women, people of color, and the LGBTQ community. Tiffany is also founder and president of AdColor, a 15-year-old networking organization dedicated to mentoring and championing diversity and inclusion in the creative industries. She shares her expertise as a board member for the American Advertising Federation, Ghetto Film School, and the Ad Council, among others. Tiffany was elected to the Bentley University Board of Trustees in 2020. Hannah is the Director of Business Development and Partnerships at Signature Tracks, leading their sales and marketing strategy, as well as developing key partnerships for bespoke music and sync licensing opportunities. Signature Tracks has soundtracked some of today's leading series like The Real Housewives, Bling Empire, and Red Table Talk, and have network partnerships with ABC Disney, Viacom, Discovery, and more. Moonlighting as an artist, producer, and singer-songwriter in her own right under Hannah Noel, Hannah's on a mission to democratize high-quality music and make expert music curation accessible to all. She also got her first taste for a career music while at Bentley, where when she wasn't on the field hockey field, she was in La Cava, moonlighting as a music blogger for several music discovery platforms. So she shares that with our moderator today, with Abigail. Jenna, fueled by a childhood love of playing the alto sax, which quickly grew into an obsession for music, her entire adulthood has been motivated by the music industry. Upon graduating from Bentley, she started at the globally televised concert series Live from the Artist's Den, securing marketing partnerships for performances by John Legend, the Lumineers, Sturgill Simpson, and more. She then pivoted with content review and product management roles at the independent music distributor TuneCore. Her experience with copyright infringement led her towards a rights operation data analysis position, supporting Universal Music Group's US and UK labels, and towards a master's certificate in music business law and policy from the Berklee College of Music. Jenna's current role at Republic Records, Def Jam, and Island Records Shared Business Affairs Department is the ultimate test and her strongest industry passion, clearing side artists, samples, lyrics, artwork, and musical assets for upcoming releases. And moderating today's conversation is current Bentley student Abigail Sullivan, a current senior studying information design and corporate communications, who has a passion for all things surrounding creativity. As a freelance content creator and brand strategist, Abigail works with local musicians on producing and sharing content, focusing primarily on EDM and indie rock musicians. On campus, she has been involved with Project Creative Industries, TEDx Bentley U, and the Hype Student Programs marketing team. Abigail's other creative pursuits include food photography through a Boston-based food Instagram account. You'll have to check it out at Foodies of 617, and her podcast, Up and Coming, where she interviews musicians, designers, and other creatives about their artistic journeys. So with that being said, I will turn the microphone over to you, Abigail.
Love it. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's great. I'm so excited to chat with you all today. So I'll just jump right into things and we can figure out who has a question and answer first and whatnot. As a creative, one of my biggest interests is hearing from Bentley grads to see how they've been able to use their business-focused education in the creative industries. How has taking a challenging business course impacted your career and your aspirations? And whoever wants to go first, anyone feeling it? We could also move on if it's too much. So really just focusing on how have the GBs impacted you working in the music industry? So if you can make any connection between that at all, that would be great.
I'm so excited to jump on this because the first thing I thought of is not the actual coursework, but the dealing with a lot of people, no matter like what you really want to do. You know, like if you're working in a business setting, and especially at Bentley in these core courses or whatever you might be doing, it is so true how they say at school, you're going to have to just deal with all different types of people. The music industry is, I think, known for what people like to call difficult personalities. And that's another topic for another time, but there's a lot of different types of people. That's what makes it awesome. And so having that communication and professionalism experience in a group setting like a GB course is actually really important, whether we enjoy that experience at school or not. I would also just say that I ended up in a legal position and did really bad on the intro to law course because it wasn't clicking at the time. So if you just never know where these things are going to come back. So it's a little hard to advise from here, but they are relevant, I promise.
It's hard to remember that group work is relevant. No, I'm totally kidding. But if anyone else wants to also touch on this, Hannah or Tiffany. Thank you for your response, Jenna. That was great.
I mean, I'm probably going to say this more times than I want to, but I'm the oldest alumni on this on this webinar. So I wish I had a relevant connection to the work that I did when I was an undergrad. I really only have a deep connection to the leadership roles that I had and how they informed the possibility of a career that was outside of, what a lot of my counterparts when I was at Bentley were looking to do, like accounting and marketing and things of that nature. I saw the possibilities of a different kind of leadership based around community because of the roles that I held, and that has been a through line through my whole career, particularly building my interest in doing specifically diversity, equity, and inclusion work as a career choice. So there wasn't a particular course per se, but it's the way that I was part of the student groups on campus and how I worked to integrate those groups and align them under one vision and one mission, because I looked across all of them and said that, hey, we're all kind of walking towards the same finish line of equity. Can we do this together? So I think when I think about music and how music unites, music is the soundtrack to so many of our lives. When we think of early memories, I think we think food maybe first and then music, or music then food. But music is always a part of that. And so being a community organizer, for lack of a better term, when I was a Bentley student is definitely giving me a good foundation in being in a completely new industry after spending 24 years in advertising. So I remarked as we were getting ready for this call that I hope I can share some wisdom about the music industry, because I'm learning, like many of you, about the evolution of music and the different ways that revenue is made and things of that nature. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, but definitely my time as a student leader has informed my career, and now more specifically in music.
I love that. Thank you so much. And Hannah, if you also want to touch on this, feel free.
I could quickly riff on this, and I kind of want to kind of build on both what Tiffany and Jenna said, in that I think foundationally, from a music perspective or a creative perspective, I found less resources available, and I found what was really from the GB coursework or the extracurricular coursework, really what the attitude fundamentally of Bentley alum. I think the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that really comes with just experience and going through the coursework, going through the program, interacting with students from all over internationally as well. And I think having such diverse perspectives, and I'm not sure, Jenna and Tiffany, what your majors were. I was a marketing major, so definitely leaning on the more creative side, where I think a majority of the fellow students were accounting and finance and knew exactly what they wanted to do. They had a 5-year plan. I felt very much like I had to carve my own lane when it came to the value that I brought to the table. I can recall GB 320. I think we do the business plan in that class, and I had to convince my finance and accounting counterparts that the marketing strategy was the single-handedly the way that the sales was going to be made. And so having kind of carved a lane and becoming more entrepreneurial in spirit. And I was talking to Emily about this the other day. It's funny that I'm using these buzzwords, but it's true, like being nimble and strategic. Some of the key pillars of Bentley has really lent very well to my career, which has expanded from music into creative, similar to Tiffany, kind of in the advertising world as well. So yes, that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Can I just confirm what GEB is, because I'm so old?
Oh, general business classes. Sorry, I should have.
Thank you. Thank
Like
you.
that,
Just,
sorry.
acronym for the for the 90
acronyms.
grads.
Many acronyms. Awesome. Thank you so much for your responses. I'm going to move on to more Women's History Month focused questions now. So, what barriers did you overcome, and how did you navigate your career in a field dominated by men? It's a really interesting question because you all are coming from different angles of the music industry. So I'm really eager to hear your responses. But yeah, Hannah, if you want to start, you're welcome to. Or
Sure.
not. Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so again, my career in music has kind of spanned across many different disciplines. I really started right after. So candidly, I started in the corporate world. I spent 1.5 years working in retail for a bigger retail firm, which is located very close to Bentley's campus. Wanted to be a buyer and quickly found out that that was not the industry that I wanted to be in, and really took a leap of faith and a pay cut to start working for a music startup. And really, it was founded by 2 males at the time. They were a few years older than me. We're basically starting a college music tour where Kendrick Lamar and Steve Aoki were the first artists on that college tour for the first year, with Chance the Rapper on the second year. So really just jumped at the opportunity. The way that I really made that jump was, and I think that probably everyone on this call can attest, is your network, is really the ability to leverage who you know, but also developing relationships. My boss at the time had been a friend of mine through the music blogging world that I had kind of started when I was at Bentley. And in just having a conversation about what my dreams were about getting into music was really how that started. So now kind of my experience with males in the industry. I also work for a company, Signature Tracks, that is founded by 3 males. We are based in LA as well. And also from the artist kind of management side, tour management side. Jenna alluded to this a little earlier. I think there's personalities that you wouldn't necessarily see in other corporate environments. And that's great because it teaches you to really grow a thick skin and not take things personally, which is something that as a sensitive, very empathic person, naturally, I've had to really, really hone that skill in. And sometimes things still get to me, can't lie to you, but I think just taking everything with a zoomed out lens now that I've had a couple of years experience just in the music industry as a whole. And even from a personal artist side, like working with composers and artists, male producers, really knowing your power, and really knowing what your boundaries are, and being able to effectively and properly communicate those things. So from an artist perspective, I have a contract written up that if I ever work with an artist, another composer, producer, I'm keeping 50% share of my rights to that piece of music, that composition. We're talking about what the royalty structure might look like on the back end, but very much protecting yourself. And I don't say that in a way to scare anyone. I say that in a way to really just calling in your power. I think fundamentally that's what I'm trying to get at from that.
I would love to add to what Hannah just said, because I've had both a very similar experience coming from obviously being a somewhat new alumni of Bentley and really not having the resources that I wish I had while I was there, but also feeling like I actually didn't go the networking route and had a very different experience. So maybe a good segue, maybe totally disjointed. I started in music right after college, and there really wasn't a backup plan, and there wasn't a, a couple years down the line, I'm going to switch type of a thing. That was something that I think took a lot of emotional and foundational resilience that folks in the music industry need to have. So I think I was lucky where my dream industry was a really good fit. When we talk about barriers and maybe hurdles, I've been at a handful of companies in the last 5 years, mostly due to the fact that I had really, to be candid, terrible male bosses. I have been shut out of many different conversations that I should have been in, talked to like a child, poked fun of for the way that I look or dress, etc. We don't need to go down the negatives, but it is a real reality, or a true reality, rather, tongue twister. So that is, I mean, those are very literal barriers. Being able to, as Hannah alluded, really hold your own, really say, no, I belong in this room. That didn't come in the first 3 years of my professional experience. And forgive me, I have 2 assistants behind me crawling around. I can see them poking their heads in. That didn't come in the first 3 years. That came very recently when I realized, as you kind of build a foundation for yourself, after maybe not having the support that you wanted at college or the resources, maybe not having that dream job right off the bat, which I didn't, really realizing that you belong in that room metaphorically and also sometimes literally, and forgetting about the fact that these barriers have even existed in the past, right? Because I think we have this conversation a lot about, like, hate this phrase, the boys club. And that may be a thing and that may be not, depending on your experience. But in my case, it definitely was. And the longer that you climb up that wall, you're much more, how do I word this? You're much better off scaling the wall the next time, if that makes sense. You're building that muscle, you're building that foundation. And eventually those things don't stand in your way anymore, because the next, if I were to have a crappy boss again, the next crappy boss I have isn't going to get away with the things that the last one did. So those barriers, again, emotional, as Hannah alluded to, be really like, I'm also an empath, sensitive, etc., but also really building that like outward personality of being like, I deserve to be here. I'm standing on my 2 feet. I have a great education. I have this skill set and this passion. And those barriers start to come down the more that you believe in yourself. So I could go on and on and on. I'd love to hear Tiffany's input about this as well. So maybe another time. But if you have a crappy situation, it's only going to make you a better, or put you in a better position later down the road, I do believe.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting for me to talk about this in particular because my whole job is so that, Jenna and Hannah and Abigail won't have crappy situations when they come into the workforce. So I have a different point of view. But I'll say this much. I went to an all-girls school in Boston for the most formative part of my life, from 10 years old to 17. And, I came into the workforce with this idea, like, if you're in an all-girls school in your formative years, how can I put this? You're unafraid of authority, regardless of whether you're one of none in a situation where it's 3 men or you're the only, like, that doesn't even inform your psyche because you've had 7 years or how many ever long years to work it out. And so when I came into corporate, my issue was, I decided to dull my voice because I came in with a strong authority and a strong sense of self-awareness that I had developed not only in that private school, but certainly at Bentley with all the leadership positions. So I tended to retreat a little bit because I felt I was coming on a little too strong. And then when there was sort of this public discourse about the angry Black woman, I was like, ooh, I don't want to be perceived as that, because I have 2 things that I have to grapple with anytime I walk into a room, is people's perception of me as a woman and then people's perception of me as a Black woman. And so I developed this like personality of acquiescence, which didn't fit with me. And I broke out of that fairly soon when I took the path of doing DE&I, because I didn't feel authentic in doing this role and not being 100% of myself. I remember very famously, I took a bias test and I was like, I don't need to take a bias test. I'm a diversity director. I'm the Pope of diversity. Why do I need to take a bias test? So I took a bias test and what came out was I had a bias. I was shocked. And that bias was male authority. I did not recognize it. And so I then was like, okay, to some people that bias might be pretty badass, but in fact, I had issues on both sides. And so I had to work to understand that all points of view are valid, but these are the very things that men say about women. And I had the opposite bias. So I had to work on that. So I have a very different career story about, being a woman and holding my own space, because, I come from a very strong, self-aware family of matriarchs, and very, very opinionated, very authoritative. And I was raised in that boot camp. So imagine being raised in that kind of boot camp and then going into corporate America and receiving messages that you're supposed to dull yourself down. You're supposed to hide. You're not supposed to be opinionated. I was very confused because I'm like, that's not what my grandmother and my great grandmother and, my mom told me. So I do think that today, when we're looking at 2021 and I'm seeing another generation come into the workforce, what I'm excited about is that they won't accept mediocrity. They won't accept performative actions. They won't accept, being, their career slowed down because of their gender. They won't accept it. So me as a Gen Xer am learning all over again and gaining confidence by sort of looking at this new generation of leaders, because they too have come from a place of seeing the adverse effects of not speaking up, and have been told, in order to stand out, you don't have to stand back to stand out. We want you, stand out to stand out. So I'm excited about the future and the present of the leaders that I'm seeing. But I have a very different point of view. That's why I was thinking as you guys were talking, I'm like, how am I going to tell them that my point of view is a little different? But nonetheless, I'm impacted, even if my upbringing was opposite of what I've often heard from young women about their experiences in the corporate work, the workforce.
Awesome. Great responses. I really love the different perspectives we have going on. I'm going to move on to the next question as part of this Women's History Month section of what I have ready for you all. What motivates you every day to keep going, disregarding the adversities that you might find in your path? So any motivational?
I could start. I think for me, what motivates me is that I have a job that puts me on the right side of history. When you think about like just my entire role, at the core of it, I have to convince people that I'm equal, which is crazy. I have to convince people that women are badass at their jobs, even more badass. That might be a bias, I'm sorry. But that's my job. My job is to say that person, when they come into this company, has to be able to be their full selves. That seems like it should be. But unfortunately, there's systems that exist in different companies that don't allow people to be their full self. So, I have a lot of nicknames and I love all of them. But at the end of the day, what inspires me and keeps me going is that I'm a dream defender. So I'll defend your dreams in a court of law. I will defend it. I'm a hope dealer because there's such a lack of hope in the world. And if I'm hopeful, hopefully that's a good sign for you. And then I'm a heart director because a lot of what I do and what I am, I direct from my heart. And so, I know I sound like a movie trailer now. In a world full of hate. I literally, when I said that phrase, I'm like, I'm literally a movie trailer. But okay, if my life was a movie trailer in a world full of hate, ideal hope.
That would be a good movie.
So yeah. Huh?
I said it would be a good movie.
I said the words and I'm like, I can't believe they're coming out of my mouth.
Someone write this down quick.
Correct. In a world full of hate, I'm a dealer of hope, and I direct dreams and I defend them. So yeah, that's what inspires me.
I actually would love to tag on to that. Oh, I'm sorry, Abigail.
Just saying
I-
things. You're good.
Forgive me for being all excuse me, giggly. I would like, I wish I were in a role maybe that had a little bit more impact on the structure of you know, the huge global community that I'm a part of. But I think that my exact thought in thinking and saying that is relevant because we all sometimes get caught up in the I'm not making a difference motif. I am coming from a legal and business affairs background / position, and that is like the most hated. Like, no, the artists don't like us sometimes, the labels don't, you know, whatever. But the motivation to be not only the best at your job and be a good employee, you know, whatever, but to impact others with your attitude, impact others with your involvement in the extracurricular groups. Like, for example, UMG has the Republic Records Action Committee, which I'm just joined on as part of the board of one of the committees. And being able to use my voice outside of my job and outside of my professionalism in that way is really impactful. Just little things like reaching out to folks to say, hey, congratulations on that panel or that award or that involvement, whatever that extra zest might be, I think is really important to think about. And that's what inspires and motivates me every day, because at the end of the day, you know, I work like 50 hours a week doing the same kind of stuff every day, and that's great and I love it. But life is a lot more than that. And there's a lot more to the music industry than that. Music impacts people at their jobs, it impacts them in the car, family events. I mean, every single place that we look. So we would be remiss not to use all of our experiences in all of those places to make our workplaces better. So I'm really excited. And, you know, again, especially the work that Tiffany's doing at Sony, like that is something that motivates me as well, even though I'm not in that space, because that's what the world is all about. Like, it's not all about music, it's all about people. So working with great people, inspiring great people, being just involved and at the table with great people is motivating, but also changing, I think, the culture shift too. And again, this could be a whole other panel, but when we're talking about these tough personalities, quote unquote, we're talking about the boys club, quote unquote, you know, the lack of mental health opportunities for artists and my colleagues and myself, the lack of, you know, work-life balance, all of these stereotypes that are true. It's really motivating to me and a lot of my colleagues to shift that narrative, and to just be, I think it's not enough to say we're listening, because we need to take action, but to actually take the actions and take the initiatives to be a part of those conversations is like the most important part of the job. The record deals and all the other stuff come later. Again, I could go on and on, but I will zip. People come first is what I could have said in one sentence.
Thank you. Great. Thanks. Hannah, if you want to speak to what motivates you every day to keep going, disregarding the adversities, you can.
I just want to thank Tiffany and Jenna for their responses. I got chills instantly with the way that, Tiffany, you described your mission and your purpose. Living heart-centered. Jenna, with you speaking about people first. I mean, I resonate so deeply with these key themes. And I think exactly what Jenna said. I think, you know, my role is, you know, leaning towards sales and partnerships. So of course what motivates me is to get my composer's music out to various partners. But the practicality of that, yeah, all of that aside, it's really about the people, the composers that I work with. We're a really small but mighty team. So I wear many hats, including, you know, providing the stage for some of my composers. We have a female composer that's one of our lead composers, who's just incredible, and she does a lot of film score, for example. So really like being able to share her story and share her voice, and what are the opportunities to lift her up? What are the opportunities to lift up the diverse kind of composers that we have on our roster? And also, I mean, there's so many threads that I could, you know, speak to that both Tiffany and Jenna touched on, but I do just want to say, like, point blank period, it's fundamentally about the people. So, echoing them, just commanding a seat at the table, sharing space and the spotlight for diverse voices, and also to normalize conversations that, again, we're not really typically comfortable with, so the mental health piece specifically, I mean, it's artist side, but also music business side. I mean, burnout is real. And again, dealing with and managing difficult personalities, like what are some ways and management up styles that we can learn? What are mentorship programs and opportunities that we can share? What are resources for diverse voices in music business can we share? And so similar to Jenna, I'm starting to get out there and trying to join different women's organizations. I can share some resources that I've found very helpful post this event as well. But yeah, just chiming in on panels, listening to even, I don't know if everybody's heard of Clubhouse, but there's quite a lot of diverse talks going on Clubhouse that I'm tuning into, specifically with artists and women in music business, diverse voices in music business as well. So just really sharing the resources. I think that that's another thing that there's a real need for, is to fill that gap of where is there a centralized place that we can find resources and find mentors and find connectors. So hopefully, moving forward, one of my soul missions is to lead from the heart and to provide an opportunity and to continue that conversation and be a connector and be a resource. So where I'm just kind of getting into this space, I do want to call out to the universe that I would like to be a connector of all of these resources, people, and opportunities to really help share the stage and spread the messages that we need to hear right now.
Clubhouse is a great tool. I've been loving the app.
Clubhouse is, let's just talk about Clubhouse, okay? I know this is not what the panel is about. But I mean, I get it. And I'm in the different rooms, and I've had some really substantial conversations, but I can't get how some people are on there all day.
Yes,
it's intense.
Yeah.
How is it going on Bentley's campus? Is it like the rage? I mean, obviously people are,
It's mostly my friends who are post-grad on it, in all honesty.
Okay.
Friends who are starting their careers in travel, music, different industries. And Bitcoin is big. If you're into Bitcoin, you're probably on Clubhouse right now.
Yeah, right. No, I think that, the novelty of it was incredible. I remember going into my first room and thinking, okay, this is amazing. It's like you can listen in, but no one has to see you, and you can leave quietly.
Yeah.
So whoever thought of it is brilliant, so to speak. But sorry, I didn't mean to derail. I just, when Clubhouse is when I hear that, I'm
relevant. It's so relevant to the music industry.
No, I always do a focus group. I'm like, yes, what do you think? And also, actually, it is kind of relevant because music on Clubhouse and the way that, for instance, they staged a Lion King musical, and they did all the rehearsals and the auditions on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So, a Broadway musical was on Clubhouse. So it's just really amazing to see how people are using this tool that really, the way that people described it was like live podcasting. And then they're turning it into something completely different, particularly holding space for individuals immediately upon when something happens, like what happened, unfortunately, in Atlanta yesterday, in terms of, no matter what comes out, that for me, my heart goes out to the AAPI community and to those listening. But having an immediate conversation that ran for 8 hours about, what that meant to the Asian community, particularly as a practitioner of DE&I, to sit in that Clubhouse room and just hear the pain and hear the stories was so, there was so much revelation for me. So I think there's different ways that Clubhouse has been able to move certain things forward, or certain disciplines forward. And I definitely see it being integral with music, as they just hired the head of partnerships from Instagram over to Clubhouse, and then they hired their CMO or their head of marketing over from Netflix. So they're really making a play to be a big player.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've made a lot of new band and creative friends through Clubhouse, which is really neat. But those types of conversations where they can just happen immediately, it really is like a gift that.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's awesome. definitely. So
Sorry, Abigail. I just
no,
had to have a
do not
focus group
apologize.
for
I will talk about
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse
Sorry.
all day. We need to talk about it another point too, because
My
I
apologies.
keep going. I actually invited a professor onto the app, which was pretty funny. Like I sent him.
Oh, that was brave.
Yeah, so I don't know if he'll take it, but it's his.
Right.
We'll see. I'll let you know. So moving on, this is more of a question I am selfishly asking you all. On the outside, and as somebody who is involved hands-on with the local music scene, it is clear that the industry continues to change rapidly due to social media, like Clubhouse, as going viral becomes even more accessible today. How do you expect this to impact the future of the industry? And we kind of touched on it with Clubhouse, but if you want to go into a different topic of it, feel free. The big loaded.
I mean, it's, I mean, you know what? But it's an important question that I think if you're in music or you're in any creative industry, you have to ask yourself every day, what's next? Because just when you get comfortable with something else pops up. You know, particularly when you think about how the music industry was really based in terms of revenue on royalties. You know, that word is so much a part of pop culture. And now it's flipped where, you know this, Jenna, it's about streaming and digital service providers and what that one stream that you have, whether it's across all the platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, and what that means in terms of artist recruitment and music company recruitment. It's really quite fascinating. So, you know, you could not tell probably a music company in the 80s that a majority of its its revenue would be coming from digital assets. Because I remember I grew up in the time of Napster where they fought that tooth and nail. And, you know, I say Napster, it immediately ages me. I know that, but it was really, really an important moment because, you know, you now think back on it, like, what were they so afraid of? And I think we think in so many different industries, when progress happens, the way that you know something is about to evolve something is when everyone's afraid of it. And so what are people afraid of now? Like, what is that thing that, and maybe it's Clubhouse because it's the new kid on the block. You know, before it was TikTok and it was Snap. And then now TikTok and Snap are partnered with the music companies and it's all good. Instagram, Facebook, partnered with the music companies. Something as simple as when you upload a photo or video and you want to have a bit of a soundtrack or some sort of music with it, you know, that's Jenna's area. That's, you know, it's like all of that has a connection to the future and the present of music. You may do it very mindlessly, but there's a lot of complicated algorithms and nuances for you to add that, you know, the Sister Sledge song, We Are Family, to a photo of you and your family. Like, it's not as simple, you know? So I think part of what I look at, and I feel very in my soul, because you look at what's going on with the Recording Academy, how many of you enjoyed the Grammys. It was probably the most diverse ever. And it will continue to be more diverse, even though you have The Weeknd boycotting it. And, you know, it will continue to be very diverse because they put in place people to help change that. So for me, I think part of the future and the present of music is what I'm doing, which is I'm the first chief diversity officer for Sony Music Group, but the third in the industry. And so what I'm looking for is not just to change Sony Music Group, but to partner with my colleagues at Universal Music Group, at Warner Music Group, which, by the way, Jenna, we all know each other. We're great friends and we meet once a month. Just know you're in good hands. You're in good hands at UMG.
Yes.
But we meet across companies. And what I love is that we're already starting out as a collective collaborating on lifting all boats within the music industry, not just our respective companies, which we know we will do well in. But imagine if we collectively get to do that for the entire industry, which will then have an impact on the music, which will then open the door for artists that we haven't even met yet, because we're making a better company for them to come into. So that to me is what I feel like. People are afraid of it, but not in a negative way. They just don't understand DE&I as it relates to music, but it's my job to help them understand. So I'm just excited about that evolution. That's the thing that gets me excited, but also no pressure, a little un poquito, a little scared, but you know, I'm up to the challenge because, you know, I'm a Bentley alum. So, you know, we can do anything, just saying.
Love it. Thank you. And Jenna and Hannah, if you guys also want to touch on this, feel free.
I mean, I think like that really wraps up a lot of what I'm thinking as well. And I think that's a good sign, especially talking about the big labels working together and really making sure that the people that are hired into the company or elevated at the company or what have you are, so to speak, the right kind of people, thinking forward, thinking proactively with all, I would say all eyes open, but I guess it doesn't quite make sense. I would love to go back to the topic of access into the industry, so to speak. So when we're talking about Clubhouse, we're talking about TikTok. There's a million topics we can kind of dive into when it gets to artists finding their fame on these apps. But I think the really important overarching theme is the lowering the barrier to access, increasing access for people with extraordinary talent who don't need to go through someone like me or my team. You know, I love them to death, but it's not for everybody. Being able to be found on the internet in the days where you couldn't play a show the last year and change, etc. I think that is so exciting. And not only does it help these companies, you know, we sign an artist from one of these apps or whatever, and they have an amazing career, but it also just kind of levels the playing field in a way that I think is really inspiring. And when I say levels the playing field, I don't even love that phrase because it kind of has a negative connotation. What I mean is it really raises the playing field for everyone. So now we're all elevated together. When we talk about folks from all different backgrounds, ages, upbringings, being found on an app that's free or on, you know, busking in the streets. I live in New York City, so that's obviously a thing. It's really exciting because everyone gets a chance. And I mean, maybe that's overly optimistic, but I really, really look forward to that ease of access. You know, there are other opportunities for artists now, technologically speaking, like when you go down distribution and all of those kind of label adjacent routes. That was my past, so I'm excited about that too. Where people can just go on their computer and upload their song and it's on iTunes 3 days later. Like these, there's an option for everyone when technology is boosted. And I know obviously, you know, nowadays we're talking a lot about like just looking at a different group of people. I like the Grammys were so inspiring to me because everyone could look and see someone that looked like them, or everyone could look to someone who they really loved. And it's not just like the top 5 that we always see. Whether that means genre, whether that means racial background, gender identity, whatever the case might be, we're starting to see these folks, again, like raise the playing field. And that's what the music industry needs to be. Like I don't think a lot of us would be in this industry today if it wasn't going in that direction, thank God. So there's a whole other, I'm sure, adjacent conversation to be had about that, but I'm really excited about that. And if an app like TikTok or Clubhouse makes it happen, great. I'll have to sign up for Clubhouse, I guess. I have it pulled up on my screen next to us as a reminder. So
I would be remiss if I didn't shout out the Sony music artists because I feel like I'm an infomercial. But I just want to say congratulations to Beyonce and Harry Styles, and you know, we just have so many incredible artists. You probably heard of, you know, Whitney Houston, Michael. I mean, just the list goes on. I even found out Sam Cooke is a Sony artist, and particularly when we think about these times that we're in, and his song "A Change Is Going to Come," which, you know, is a soundtrack for a time in the 60s where there was unrest, and he as an artist felt that he needed to put words to song. And then you fast forward to 2020, her, who won for Song of the Year for I Can't Breathe, again, an artist capturing a moment in time that I think the world stopped breathing, which was, you know, back in May. So, you know, just a shout out to artists. You know, obviously I have to shout out Sony artists, but in all artists, even those at UMG and WMG, who really work hard to archive the times. And again, it just shows how impactful music is in marking time.
Thank you both. That was great. Hannah, if you want to touch on this, or we can move on to the next question, whatever you're feeling.
I have some very strong opinions, I think, on the artist side, the independent artist side, that I think is an adjacent level conversation again. And I want to kind of impress that I'm also excited for the opportunities. However, what I see in actual representation, and I do want to call that to light, is 2.3% of all producers in the majors are women. You know, we're seeing, I want to speak to the realities of what I'm seeing. And someone as an artist, it's kind of funny because I kind of bridged like this sync licensing world as well as a personal artist world where they really don't necessarily align in a lot of cases. So though the level playing field, the playing field is leveled up. I think another thing that I want to speak on and touch on really quick is that from a user-generated content experience, from a TikTok or the nascent platform Clubhouse that we kind of been speaking about, and these rising other platforms like Triller and other video editing platforms where they're kind of trying to adopt this TikTok model. Though it is, and I love the fact that Tiffany, you talked about just hitting, because I'm going to get back to the connection here, is just that artists right now are creating art for the sake of creating art. Through the pain and through what we're seeing is just the fact that you're able to have the space and time to create the art. And I think perhaps one of, I hate to say it, but mine, because it's revenue losses for, just as example, Live Nation, like revenue losses were incredible for Live. But I just want to say, from an artist perspective, to have space and time to work on your art, to hone in, to really listen, to pull out of your intuitive self, what is the messaging that you need to share. The challenge is from there, and I love that there's, I believe, some more space and time from that on a very personal level. The challenge that I do see is, as much as the level playing field has been lifted, or the playing field has been lifted, what I do see is increasing competition to cut through the noise, and to how does one artist create a viral track? How does one artist have the time and space to not only create their music and art, but have the wherewithal to understand content strategy, let alone PR strategy, let alone knowing the resources. As an artist, it's pay to play. As an individual artist, it is pay to play in a lot of cases. A lot of the blogs that I used to write for are pay to play. And so from my understanding, bigger labels have the opportunity to place their artists in front of these playlists, put them in front of the editorial playlist in ways that, even as a viral artist, I'd have to get your attention with a viral video for you to even notice me, first and foremost. So I love that the playing field again is raised. The platforms are available, but how much harder do you have to work as an independent artist to get heard, to get seen, to become viral? Do you even want to make viral music? Personally, I don't make pop music. I make very like indie-tronic music. And so I don't think my song is going to get picked up virally on TikTok. There's not going to be a challenge dance to that song, to my music. And
you know what? I think, Hannah, when you think about like, what's the end game? So you said artists are making art for art. And I think as an independent artist, and I've met several independent artists. In fact, one of my best friends, I think you could call him an independent artist, but I brought him on as the musical director for the award show that I launched. And he's been with us since 2008. One of the things that we started then, before even Spotify or anybody existed, was this thing called a CD. And on a CD, we had a playlist of independent artists that submitted their songs to be a part of it. And we hoped that it would get into the hands of brands. If we did that today, to your point, we could not cut through the clutter. Our thing would look archaic next to a quick Spotify playlist. Things are evolving so fast, but I hear you and think there are things like, AWOL is a group that Sony just acquired, Artists Without Labels. It started for that very reason, to support the independent artist and give them different avenues to get that team, to get that, without having to go maybe through the traditional label route. So there's a lot of different business models. The Orchard does that. These are all companies owned by Sony Music Group, and I'm sure UMG has a version of this, but there's different routes for different artists. I think there's something for everybody, but obviously with TikTok and with Snap and with Triller, and it's interesting that you brought that example because they just signed a big deal with Swiss Beats on something he created on Instagram. And what he did, which was I thought really cool, is he gave every artist that was part of the Versus battle stock in the new company, because he recognized that he would not be able to get that deal if not for the battles between a Jill Scott and Erica Badu. So all of them are now stockholders in the new company, which I think is another incredible model. So there's models out there to accommodate, you know, that artist that's sitting in their bedroom right now, creating what they believe is the next hit. But then you have, you know, the commoditization and the buildup of the Billie Eilish story. So now, you know, there's going to be like 10 Billie Eilishes that are, you know, hanging out with maybe their brother or sister, you know, in their house, trying to create the next hit. It's so interesting that there's so many different avenues, but it's always the question of what's your end game. Because for some people, their end game is the Grammys. For some actors, their end game is the Oscars. For some artists, the end game is if I can change one person's life if they hear my song. So everyone has, I think, a different end game. And when you plot the end game, then you work backwards and say, okay, what kind of path can I create to get to that particular end game? Because there is a valuable platform for every type of artist, I believe. That doesn't, I think, and we have to do a good job at getting the word out about that, to your point, Hannah, because I don't think people know all the pathways to success when you think about a traditional music company.
Thank you. That was super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to figure out where our question and A box is.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
There's a question. Yeah.
So we got one question submitted in the chat, which we can hit really quickly, and then I'll take one from the Q&A box. So from Kevin, who actually is the main singer and guitarist in We Demand Parachutes, a band I take pictures for. Just if there's time, in the current environment where access and discovery is elevated, how do artists not overdo it and grow a following while adhering to a core brand? If you guys have any insight at all into that, we can touch on that and try to run to a question in the Q&A box.
Yeah, I would just say quickly, if you watch the Grammys, what I loved what they did was they told stories about each artist. And so the one they told about Doja Cat, how she grew her fan base, 100, 500, 1,000 people at a time. She invited feedback. She would post songs and they would be like, that sucks. That's great. You change that. I think it feels like, at least for me, she came out of nowhere, but it was really interesting to hear her story about how long she worked to become an overnight success. And that's the thing that I think, per your question, and just in my mind, like, people will see this part of my career and think, wow, okay, Tiff, but I worked 24 years to be an overnight success. And so I think, to your point about overdoing it and saturation, I think it's really go with your gut, because honestly, if you're doing things, and there are artists who are fine with doing just that, with wearing a certain color because it gets 100 more likes, like there are people who literally plan things that way. And then there's those incredible moments, like the random guy who could post something on his keyboard about just sitting at home doing nothing, and it just blew up on TikTok, and it's not a full song. It's literally 3 sentences, and it's everyone did a video to that song. And so you don't know, at least if we could figure out what goes viral, we would all be very wealthy. I mean, it's really just a luck of the draw. I use the example of, I posted a photo on LinkedIn, the day after the inauguration of Michelle Obama and Jill Biden. Now, it's a photo that was taken in 2016. It's a black and white photo. They looked gorgeous. Michelle's hair was bone straight, which you normally never see. Jill Biden looked beautiful. She was wearing white. Michelle was wearing a black dress. And I literally posted, "Welcome to the First Ladies Club, hashtag Shelly and Jilly," right? Classic story. I went to sleep. I woke up, 60,000 views. I'm like, what? And I'm like, the caption, it was not anything. To this day, and that was in second week of January, 389,000 views. I actually had to cut off the comments because it was starting to get, did I think that was going to go viral? I thought no one's going to see this. And it's LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn reached out to me and they said, hey, your little post went viral. Do you want to become a LinkedIn influencer? There's only 750 people out of 750 million that are LinkedIn influencers. this is what you have to do. And I was like, that's easy. And so that created, I guess, a viral situation for me. But I didn't post that thinking LinkedIn was going to come and ask me to be an influencer. So I think, I posted that from a good place. I was just so proud. And I was like, I want to celebrate these two beautiful women, and I'm going to go to sleep. So I think that's, I don't have a formula of what oversaturation is and what being viral is, but I know one thing. If you post something and you create something from your heart, if it's genuinely from your heart, chances are it'll go viral, but not in the ways you think.
Totally. Thank you for that. So we could have someone else also jump in on that, or we can move on really quickly to a Q&A question and just try to get one more in, if that's okay.
I'm happy to move forward. I think Tiffany
Perfect.
that up beautifully.
Yes, I love it.
Nailed it.
Awesome. Well done. So let me hit answer live. If you all see the question, I feel like you should be seeing it somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just messing with you. So Malachi Pearson, who actually is definitely a mentor for me at Bentley, he started the org that I hold near and dear to my heart, Project Creative Industries, and he's a creative, great photographer. He says, this is a really great panel. Congrats to all involved. Who are some artists that you're listening to or excited about in 2021? I know we touched on a few names, especially from Sony Music Group.
That's the hardest question of this panel.
Oh yeah, Jenna, before working at a music company, I would be like, boop, 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 boop. Like, and I would proudly celebrate my Spotify playlist, which, has Sony artists, and luckily a lot of them are Sony artists like Justin Timberlake and Pharrell, Adele. Like, my playlist is good, but the song that I'm just looking most forward to, the thing that's really got me excited, I don't think this will get me in trouble, but I just love Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars. I just love the Silk Sonic combination. Their performance was unbelievable, and I'm fans of them apart. And so together, it's like, what did the universe do to me during COVID? So I'm super excited about them, but I'm super excited to hopefully attend live concerts again. I just want to be and hear the large bass and like the anticipation of them coming on stage, and the smell of soda and whatever people bring to their seats. Like, I want it all. I can't wait for that.
I'm fist bumping. I'm the biggest Anderson .Paak fan on the planet.
So
if
good.
anyone on this panel knows me.
So good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, that would have been an answer. I have Spotify pulled up because this is the hardest question. And we talked about oversaturation. We talked about undersaturation. There's a whole other conversation. Let's see what's on here. I'm an indie rock alternative fan, but I think for me, what I'm really excited about seeing right now, especially as we kind of move societally into different, into maybe a happier, more joyful, celebratory phase, is hip hop and pop music, which I'm not the biggest pop gal, despite working, for a major label. I'm just really excited to hear music that makes you feel really good again. I'm a major fan of Phoebe Bridgers and sad girl stuff, but at the right, but at the end of the day, I'm shifting back to my Anderson moment, because I want to go see these artists and dance and sing and have my little, seltzer with lime or whatever. So as I'm looking through my list, it's a lot of folk. It's a lot of mellow. We're thinking about our feelings, which is usually not my thing. An artist I'm really, really excited about, who's under the UMG umbrella, but not one of my labels, unfortunately, is JID, the rapper JID. And his group Spillage Village, which is a collaboration with a couple other artists. And I'm going to put it out into the universe. I'm really hoping for a Kendrick Lamar album. We'll see.
Nice.
We'll see.
Nice.
I have no intel, but
nice.
Hip hop. We'll see. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that people are just feeling inspired and good about what they're making. Party music, maybe.
Yeah, this was a super hard question to answer, and I was actually just looking through my Spotify as well. One of the bands that has it's actually an artist collective. I don't know if you have heard of the band SAULT, SAULT. They're kind of a fusion of disco house, like soul. They're out of the UK, so I'm actually really personally interested in a lot of UK-based soul, neo soul artists. Personally, so Salt is actually really, their story is really cool. They started around 2019, but they're essentially like a mystery artist. No one really knows who is behind the band, but it's all about Black centric voices. It's all their storytelling. Their last album, Untitled, is called Untitled Black Is. And my favorite song on the album is, honestly, when I heard it, I immediately started crying. Um, and it is called Wildfires. So specifically calling out the band Salt and specifically calling out the newest album, Untitled Black Is, from them that they came out with in 2020. But I think that's what's so cool about their story is that they impress anonymity because their story begets their kind of their art. So yeah, wanted to just share that quickly. They're amazing and they make amazing music. So highly recommend everybody and anyone check them out.
Thank you. We should have made a collaborative Spotify playlist before this.
Exactly.
But
Bentley alumni
next time.
Abigail, what about you? A music.
In terms of what I've been listening to, We Demand Parachutes with Kevin McCord, who's on this call right now, is an awesome band. He does the most with content. I'm super impressed with how consistent he is with what he puts out. I have a million friends that are SoundCloud rappers, Jordan Follins, Jay Prophet, Steve Oxner, and Jack Clavette, Goodnight, and he spells Goodnight with 2 X's. Stone the Druggist is a band I've loved for years, and they're a local band on the North Shore. I could go on, but yeah. So a lot of tiny people, small followings, but they will be big, and they are up and coming, and they are on my podcast.
Excellent plug. Well, in the interest of time, I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Abigail. You did a great job leading the conversation this afternoon. Thank you to our wonderful panelists, Tiffany, Hannah, and Jenna. We have so many good questions. I'm so sorry that we have to end today's, but as Abigail put in the chat, and to all of you, please connect with our panelists on LinkedIn and maybe continue the conversation. We hope to be able to do more, and stay tuned for Bentley on Clubhouse, because I am also like, I want to create a Bentley alumni club on Clubhouse. I'm putting it out there into the atmosphere. So you all stay tuned. And thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thanks so much.